The dispatch radio crackled to life at exactly 11:47 p.m., shattering the relative quiet of the late shift. All units, domestic disturbance, 847 Maple Street. Female caller reports violence in progress. Possible child on premises. Repeat, child on premises. Officer Jake Martinez was already reaching for his keys before the dispatcher finished. His hand instinctively went to his partner, not the human kind, but the 80-pound German Shepherd sitting alert in the back of his specially equipped patrol vehicle. Rex's ears had perked up the moment Jake moved, his dark eyes intelligent and focused. The dog knew. After 3 years together, Rex always knew when they were about to face something serious. "Let's go, boy," Jake said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline already coursing through his veins. He'd been a cop for 12 years in Ohio, a town small enough that everyone knew everyone, which somehow made these calls even worse. Domestic violence. A child involved. The two words that made every officer's stomach clench. The patrol car's sirens pierced the February night as Jake pushed the speed limit through residential streets lined with sleeping houses. Valentine's Day decorations still hung in windows, paper hearts and Cupid cutouts, creating a jarring contrast with the darkness of their mission. Rex remained steady in the back, his professional demeanor unwavering. The dog had been trained at a facility in Columbus, selected not just for his intelligence but for his unusual temperament. Aggressive enough to apprehend suspects when needed, but gentle enough to comfort trauma victims. Jake had seen Rex do both. Tonight, he suspected, would require the latter. They arrived at 847 Maple Street in 4 minutes flat. The duplex was a modest 2-story building with peeling paint and a sagging porch, the kind of place that had seen better days decades ago. Backup was still 3 minutes out. Jake made the call every officer dreads, go in now or wait for support. But the screaming from inside made the decision for him. A woman's voice, shrill with terror, shouting, "No, please, not in front of her." Her the child. Jake radioed his position and approached, Rex at his heel, both moving with practiced precision. The front door hung ajar, likely kicked open or broken. Through the gap, Jake could see chaos illuminated by a single lamp lying on its side. He pushed the door wider, announcing himself, "Police, I'm coming in." The scene inside looked like a tornado had torn through the small living room. A coffee table lay on its side, its glass top shattered into 1,000 glittering pieces across worn carpet. A woman, late 20s, bleach hair disheveled, stood backed against the far wall, her lip bleeding, mascara running down her cheeks in black rivulets. Facing her was a large man, maybe 6'2", with arms like tree trunks and rage contorting his features. "Get out," the man bellowed at Jake. "This is private property, you got no right." "Step away from her, now." Jake's voice carried authority earned through years of confrontations, but his hand rested on his service weapon. Rex stood perfectly still beside him, a coiled spring waiting for the command. The man, later identified as the woman's boyfriend of 8 months, took one look at the 70-pound dog with bared teeth and reconsidered his options. He raised his hand slowly, stepping backward. "This is bull, she called you for nothing. We're just having a discussion." But Jake wasn't looking at any more. His trained eyes scanned the room, counting exits, checking for weapons, and most importantly, looking for the child. "Ma'am, are you Jenna Porter?" he asked the woman, who nodded frantically. "Where's your daughter?" Jenna's eyes went wide. "Emma, oh God, Emma." She started toward the hallway but grabbed her arm. "She's fine," snarled. "She's asleep, don't wake her up." "Remove your hand from her." Jake's voice had dropped to something dangerous. Rex let out a low growl, the kind that raised hair on the back of necks, and Jake nodded to Jenna. "Show me where she is." Jenna practically ran down the narrow hallway, sobbing. "Emma, baby, Mommy's here." She burst into a small bedroom painted lavender with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. But the toddler bed with its princess sheets was empty, covers thrown back. That's when Jake heard it, a sound that would haunt him for years afterward. whimpering, soft and muffled coming from the closet. He approached slowly, Rex moving with him. Jake opened the closet door carefully, pushing aside tiny dresses and winter coats. There, wedged between a stack of shoe boxes and a laundry basket, sat the smallest person Jake had ever seen look so terrified. She couldn't have been more than 3 feet tall, with curls matted against her face and enormous blue eyes that seemed to take up half her face. She clutched a stuffed bear that had seen better days, one eye hanging by a thread. "Hey there, sweetheart," Jake whispered, crouching down to her level. But the little girl just stared, her whole body trembling. Then Rex did something remarkable. Without any command, the dog lowered himself to his belly and army crawled forward, moving with impossible gentleness for an animal trained to take down criminals. He stopped just inches from the child, then laid his massive head on his paws, looking up at her with what could only be described as kindness. The trembling slowed. Emma's death grip on the teddy bear loosened slightly, her tear-filled eyes fixed on Rex's face, studying him. Several heartbeats passed in silence. Then slowly, as if moving through water, Emma reached out one tiny hand. Her fingers, small as baby carrots, touched Rex's cold, wet nose. "Good doggy," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Jake felt something in his chest tighten. In that moment, in a closet that smelled of fabric softener and childhood innocence interrupted, a bond formed that would later change the course of justice itself. He just didn't know it yet. "Yeah, sweetie," Jake said softly, watching Rex's tail begin a slow, careful wag. "He's a very good doggy. His name is Rex, and we're here to help you and your mommy. Is that okay?" Emma nodded, just barely, never taking her eyes off Rex. Behind them, backup arrived. The apartment erupted in radio chatter, camera flashes for evidence photos, and the sound of handcuffs clicking onto wrists. But in that closet, time seemed suspended. Jake would remember every detail: the glow stars casting greenish light, the smell of children's shampoo, and the way a traumatized 3-year-old found comfort in a police dog's gentle eyes. What he couldn't know then was that this moment, this connection between a frightened child and a compassionate dog, was only the beginning. In the weeks to come, when Emma's voice would disappear entirely, when prosecutors would struggle to bring justice, when a courtroom would become a battlefield, Rex would be the key to everything. But that night, Jake simply helped Emma out of the closet, Rex staying close to her side, and carried her to safety while she whispered secrets to the dog that only he could hear. 2 weeks had passed since that terrible night, and Emma Porter had not spoken a single word. Her grandmother, Hayes, sat at the kitchen table of her small ranch house, watching her granddaughter push Cheerios around in a bowl. The little girl who used to chatter nonstop about butterflies and rainbows and her imaginary friend Mr. Pickles now existed in complete silence. She ate when food was placed in front of her. She nodded or shook her head when asked direct questions. But her voice, that precious, high-pitched voice that once filled rooms with laughter, had simply vanished. "Come on, baby girl," coaxed, her own voice cracking with emotion. "Just one word. Can you tell Grandma what you want for breakfast tomorrow? Pancakes, waffles?" She waited, hopping, praying. Nothing. Emma's blue eyes, once bright and curious, now seemed flat and distant, as if she were looking at something far away that no one else could see. Had raised 3 children of her own, helped raise a dozen, but this was different. This silence felt heavy, like a physical presence in the room. She tried everything: Emma's favorite foods, her beloved frozen movies, even bribing her with the promise of a new toy. The child simply stared, unresponsive, trapped somewhere inside herself. The doorbell rang at 9 o'clock sharp, had been expecting them. Dr. Sarah entered with a warm smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The child psychologist was in her mid-40s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and a messenger bag full of toys designed to help children express what words couldn't. She'd been recommended by Child Protective Services, specializing in trauma cases involving young children. "Hello, Emma," Doctor said softly, settling onto the living room floor where the little girl sat surrounded by untouched dolls. My name is Sarah. I brought some things I thought you might like to play with. Is it okay if I sit here with you? Emma didn't acknowledge her. Her small hands rested in her lap, completely still. This wasn't normal 3-year-old behavior. Children this age moved constantly, touched everything, asked a million questions. This stillness was wrong. For 45 minutes, Doctor tried various techniques. She brought out puppets, hoping Emma would speak through them. She offered crayons and paper for drawing. She played with a dollhouse narrating stories, hoping Emma would join in. Nothing worked. The child observed but didn't participate, as if watching the world from behind thick glass. When the session ended, Doctor joined in the kitchen, her expression grave. Mrs. Hayes, I need to be honest with you. What Emma is experiencing is severe traumatic mutism. It's not that she's choosing not to speak. Her brain has essentially shut down that ability as a protective mechanism. His hand shook as she poured coffee. Will she ever talk again? With time and proper therapy, most children do recover their speech, Doctor assured her, but her tone held caution. However, Emma witnessed something profoundly terrifying at a critical developmental stage. She saw violence perpetrated against her mother by someone she knew and trusted. At 3 years old, she doesn't have the cognitive tools to process that kind of trauma. What does this mean for the case? Asked, though she dreaded the answer. Her daughter Jenna was currently in a domestic violence shelter, getting her life together, attending mandatory counseling. Meanwhile, sat in county jail, held on $50,000 bail that thankfully he couldn't post, but had heard whispers. Without Emma's testimony, the charges might not stick. Doctor sighed. That's actually why I'm here. The district attorney's office contacted me. They need Emma to testify at the preliminary hearing in 3 weeks. Absolutely not, stood abruptly. Look at her. She can't even tell me if she wants juice or water. You want to put her on a witness stand. I understand your protective instincts. Do you? His voice rose. Do you understand what it's like to watch a child disappear inside herself? To have her wake up screaming every night but not be able to tell me what the nightmares are about? To see her flinch every time a door slams? Doctor reached across the table, touching his hand gently. I do understand. I've worked with dozens of children like Emma, and I know this seems impossible right now. But as a public defender who's already filing motions to dismiss, without Emma's testimony corroborating what happened that night, all they have is Jenna's word against his. And defense attorneys are very good at painting domestic violence victims as unreliable. Sank back into her chair, defeated. So what do we do? There might be a way, Doctor said carefully, but it's unconventional. That afternoon, District Attorney James sat in his office, staring at Emma's file with growing frustration. At 47, he'd prosecuted hundreds of cases, but this one was eating at him. The evidence was there. Jenna's injuries, the destroyed apartment Emma found hiding in a closet. But evidence wasn't enough without testimony. Had 2 prior domestic violence charges that had been dismissed when victims refused to cooperate. He couldn't let it happen again. His desk phone rang. James, it's Sarah. We need to talk about Emma Porter. 20 minutes later, understood the problem. A 3-year-old who couldn't speak, couldn't testify. Without testimony, would walk. It was that simple and that devastating. There has to be something, said, running his hands through his graying hair. What about play therapy? Could she act out what happened with dolls? Too ambiguous for court, Doctor replied. Defense would tear it apart. No, what Emma needs is something specific, something that makes her feel safe enough to find her voice again. Like what? I'm grasping at straws here, Sarah. There was a pause on the line. Actually, there might be something. It's going to sound unusual, but hear me out. The night Emma was rescued, there was a police dog at the scene, a K-9 unit named Rex. According to Officer Martinez's report, it was the only time Emma has spoken since the incident. She called the dog Good Doggy, and seemed to calm down in his presence. Frowned. Okay, so the kid likes dogs. How does that help us? What if the dog could be with her when she testifies? You mean like, in the courtroom, during testimony? His legal mind immediately went to the complications. That's highly irregular. The defense would claim it's prejudicial, cute kid with a sympathetic dog playing to emotions rather than facts. There's precedent, Doctor countered. Facility dogs are being used in courtrooms across the country for exactly this purpose. They help trauma victims, especially children, feel secure enough to testify. There's research showing children testify more accurately and completely when a trained comfort dog is present. Was silent, considering. It was unorthodox, certainly. Judge was fair but traditional. She might reject it outright. But then he thought about Emma's file, about Jenna Porter's swollen face in the crime scene photos, about smug expression during his arraignment. Find me everything you can on facility dogs in courtrooms, finally said. Case law, studies, success rates, and find out if this Rex is certified for that kind of work. If there's even a chance this could help Emma testify, I'm willing to fight for it. After hanging up, opened Emma's file again. Clipped to the front was the photo taken that night. A tiny girl clutching a worn teddy bear, her face streaked with tears, and beside her, a German shepherd sitting at perfect attention, his eyes gentle and watchful. Maybe, just maybe, they had found their answer. But first, they'd have to convince a judge to allow something that had never been done in their county before, and the clock was ticking. Judge had presided over the county courthouse for 17 years. She'd seen everything from petty theft to murder trials, from custody battles that made grown men cry to corporate fraud cases that put her to sleep. But this was a first. Let me make sure I understand correctly, mister, she said, peering over her reading glasses at the district attorney standing before her bench. You want to bring a dog into my courtroom during testimony from a 3-year-old witness? Not just any dog, Your Honor. James stepped forward, his briefcase full of research he'd spent the last week compiling. Rex is a certified K-9 officer with the police department. He's been trained not only in suspect apprehension, but also in victim assistance. He's a facility dog, specifically trained to provide comfort to trauma victims during legal proceedings. Judge leaned back in her leather chair, her expression skeptical. At 62, she'd earned her reputation as fair but by the book. She didn't like surprises, and she certainly didn't like setting precedents that could be overturned on appeal. This is Ohio, counselor, not California. We don't have therapy dogs in courtrooms here. Actually, Your Honor, we do. Pulled out a file, approaching the bench with papers. In 2019, the Ohio Supreme Court issued guidelines for facility dogs in courtrooms. Cleveland, Cincinnati, and Columbus have all successfully used them in cases involving child witnesses. I have documentation of 43 cases across the state where facility dogs assisted traumatized witnesses, particularly children. The conviction rate in those cases was 87%, and not a single verdict was overturned on appeal due to the dog's presence. Defense attorney Robert rose from his seat, his designer suit immaculate, his expression annoyed. Was a public defender, but he was good, too good for to have gotten lucky with. Your Honor, this is ridiculous. The prosecution wants to parade a child and a cute dog in front of the court to manipulate emotions. How is my client supposed to get a fair hearing when the witness comes with what essentially amounts to a sympathy prop? A sympathy prop, his voice hardened. We're talking about a 3-year-old girl who witnessed her mother being violently assaulted. She hasn't spoken in 2 weeks. Without support, she can't testify. Without testimony, a dangerous man walks free. That's not my problem, shot back. If the witness is incompetent to testify, that's unfortunate, but it doesn't give the prosecution the right to stage a performance designed to tug at heartstrings rather than present facts. Judge held up her hand, silencing both attorneys. Mister, I understand your concerns. However, I'm not making any decisions without more information. Mister, I want to see this dog and meet the officer who handles him. I want expert testimony about how this works, and I want case law on my desk by tomorrow morning. We'll reconvene in 3 days. Officer Jake Martinez had never been nervous in a courtroom before. He'd dozens of times, burglary cases, DUIs, assault charges. He always spoke clearly, stuck to the facts, and left. But standing in Judge's chambers with Rex sitting calmly at his side, he felt the weight of something bigger than a single case. "So, Officer Martinez," Judge said, studying Rex with curious eyes, "tell me about this dog." Jake straightened. "Rex is a 4-year-old German Shepherd, Your Honor. He's been with the department for 3 years. He's trained in narcotics detection, suspect apprehension, and search and rescue. But about a year ago, we sent him for additional certification as a facility dog through Canine Companions for Independence." "Why?" she asked. "Because we kept running into situations where victims, especially kids, were too traumatized to cooperate with investigations. We'd have children who witnessed crimes but were too scared to talk to detectives. We thought having a dog might help." Jake paused, choosing his words carefully. "Rex isn't just trained to sniff out drugs or chase suspects. He's trained to read emotional distress and respond with calming behaviors. He knows the difference between someone who needs him to be protective and someone who needs him to be gentle." Judge walked around her desk, approaching Rex slowly. The dog didn't move, didn't react, just watched her with intelligent, calm eyes. She extended her hand, and Rex sniffed it politely before allowing her to pet his head. "He was there the night Emma Porter was found?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am. Emma was hiding in a closet, completely terrified. She wouldn't come out for me or the other officers, but Rex crawled right up to her and something changed. She touched his nose and said, 'Good doggy.' Those were the last words anyone heard her speak." Judge's expression softened slightly. "And you believe Rex can help her testify?" "I know he can, Your Honor. I've seen him work with trauma victims before. There was a woman who was carjacked last year. Guy held a gun to her head for 20 minutes. She couldn't stop shaking long enough to give a statement. We brought Rex in, and within 5 minutes she was calm enough to describe the suspect. We made an arrest within hours." Dr. Sarah, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, spoke up. "Your Honor, if I may, I've worked with facility dogs in therapy sessions with traumatized children. The results are remarkable. The dog provides what we call a secure base, a source of comfort that allows the child to access traumatic memories without being overwhelmed by them. Emma's mutism is a defense mechanism. Her brain has essentially decided that speaking is too dangerous because speaking means remembering. But with Rex present, she might feel safe enough to override that protective response." Robert, who had been allowed to attend the meeting, crossed his arms. "This is all very touching, but it doesn't address the fundamental problem. A dog in the courtroom will prejudice any jury. You put a crying child next to a heroic-looking police dog, and my client is convicted before testimony even begins." "This is a preliminary hearing, mister," Judge reminded him. "There won't be a jury, just me. Are you suggesting I'm incapable of evaluating testimony objectively?" Shifted uncomfortably. "Of course not, Your Honor, but what about the actual trial? If Emma testifies with the dog at a preliminary hearing and we proceed to trial, the prosecution will argue she needs the dog there too. It sets a precedent." "Maybe that's a precedent worth setting," Judge said quietly. She turned back to Jake. "Officer Martinez, if I allow Rex in my courtroom, can you guarantee he won't be disruptive? No barking, no movement, nothing that would interfere with proceedings." "Absolutely, Your Honor. Rex has been in high-stress environments, raids, crowd control, active crime scenes. He knows how to stay calm and quiet. He'll sit beside Emma and won't move unless she needs him to." Judge walked back to her desk, her mind clearly working through the legal and ethical implications. She picked up his file, flipping through pages of case studies and legal precedents. The room waited in tense silence. Finally she spoke. "I'm going to allow it." Stood abruptly. "Your Honor." "Sit down, mister. I've made my decision." Her voice carried authority that filled the room. "This is a preliminary hearing to determine if there's enough evidence to proceed to trial. Emma Porter is 3 years old. She's the primary witness to a violent crime. If a trained facility dog can help her provide testimony, then I'm going to allow it. However," she looked pointedly if this becomes a circus, if that dog causes any disruption whatsoever, I will shut it down immediately." "Understood." "Yes, Your Honor," said, barely containing his relief. "Officer Martinez, you and Rex will need to be present at all pretrial preparations with Emma. Doctor, you'll coordinate with all parties to ensure Emma is as ready as possible. We'll reconvene in 2 weeks. That gives us time to prepare the child and file any necessary motions." As they left the judge's chambers, Jake looked down at Rex, who gazed up at him with those knowing eyes. "You hear that, boy? We're going to court, and we've got to help a little girl find her voice again." Rex's tail wagged once, as if he understood completely. But even as they walked out into the courthouse hallway, no one fully grasped how profound Emma's eventual testimony would be, or how 3 simple words from a child would echo far beyond that courtroom. The real work was just beginning. The police department's community room had never looked so welcoming. Officer Jake Martinez had spent his morning transforming the sterile space into something a 3-year-old might not find terrifying. Colorful foam mats covered the linoleum floor. A basket of toys sat in the corner, stuffed animals, building blocks, picture books. Soft music played from a Bluetooth speaker, some kind of gentle lullaby playlist doctor had recommended. Rex lay in the center of it all on his favorite blue mat, looking supremely unconcerned about the fuss. He'd been bathed that morning, his coat brushed until it shone, though Jake suspected Emma wouldn't care about that. Kids had a way of seeing past appearances to what really mattered. The door opened at 10 o'clock exactly. Hayes entered first, her weathered hand clutching Emma's tiny one so tightly their knuckles had turned white. The little girl stopped dead in the doorway, her eyes huge in her small face. She wore purple overalls with a butterfly patch, and her curls were pulled back with matching clips. She looked even smaller than Jake remembered. "Hey there, Emma," Jake said softly, staying seated on the floor so he wouldn't loom over her. "Remember me, Officer Jake, and this is my partner, Rex. He's been waiting to see you." At the sound of his name, Rex's ears perked up, but he didn't move. His training was absolute. He wouldn't approach unless invited. Emma stared at the dog, her free hand clutching a different stuffed animal than last time, a purple unicorn with a sparkly horn. Doctor, who had been waiting in the corner, spoke gently. "Emma, Rex is very happy you came to visit, but he's going to wait right there until you're ready to say hello. You can take all the time you need." Minutes ticked by. 5, 10. Emma remained frozen in the doorway, a statue in butterfly overalls. Looked at Jake with desperate, questioning eyes. Is this going to work? But Jake kept his expression calm and patient. Rushing would ruin everything. Then so slowly it was almost imperceptible, Emma took one step forward. Just one. Her grip on his hand loosened slightly. "That's it, baby girl," whispered. "Remember the nice doggy who was at Mommy's house." Another step, then another. Emma was maybe 6 feet from Rex now, close enough to see his gentle brown eyes, the way his tail lay still, the rise and fall of his breathing. The dog looked directly at her, and something passed between them, some wordless communication that humans couldn't quite understand. Emma let go of her grandmother's hand. The room seemed to hold its breath as the tiny girl took 3 more steps, closing the distance. She stopped right in front of Rex, her unicorn clutched to her chest like a shield. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Emma extended one small hand, the same way she had that terrible night, and touched Rex's nose with a single finger. Rex's tail began to wag. slowly at first, just a gentle sweep across the mat, then more enthusiastically. Emma's lips, which hadn't curved upward in 2 weeks, twitched into the ghost of a smile. "Soft," she whispered. Gasped audibly, her hand flying to her mouth. Doctor's eyes went wide. Jake felt his throat tighten with unexpected emotion. One word, just one word, but it was everything. Week 2 brought more progress. Emma now entered the community room without hesitation, making a beeline straight for Rex. She'd sit cross-legged beside him, running her hands through his fur, occasionally pressing her face against his side. She didn't speak during these sessions, but her body language transformed. The rigid tension melted away. Her breathing evened out. Sometimes she even hummed, wordless melodies only she and Rex could hear. "We're building what's called a secure attachment," Doctor explained during one session while Emma lay sprawling across Rex's back like he was a furry pillow. Rex represents safety to her. In her traumatized mind, he's associated with the moment the danger ended, when was taken away, when she was finally safe. "But she needs to talk," said worriedly. "The hearing is in 10 days. Humming isn't testimony." "Patience," Doctor counseled. "We're asking a 3-year-old to do something incredibly difficult, to access and verbalize the most frightening moment of her life. That takes time." Week 3 changed everything. Emma arrived on Tuesday morning wearing her favorite purple dress with the twirly skirt. She'd insisted on it, reported, her first strong opinion about anything since the incident. She ran to Rex immediately, wrapping her small arms around his neck in a hug that made the big dog's tail helicopter with joy. "Hi, Rex," she said clearly. Jake, who had been reviewing notes at a table, nearly dropped his pen. "Hi, Emma," he replied, keeping his voice steady despite his racing heart. "Did you have a good morning?" Emma looked at him, really looked at him for the first time. "I had pancakes, with syrup, lots of syrup." The words tumbled out in that distinctive 3-year-old cadence, full of importance and wonder at ordinary things. "Wow, that sounds delicious," Jake said. "Did you save any for Rex?" Emma giggled, actually giggled. The sound was like sunshine breaking through clouds. "Dogs don't eat pancakes, silly. They eat dog food." From that moment, it was as if a dam had broken. Emma talked to Rex constantly during their sessions. She told him about her toys, her favorite cartoons, her imaginary friend Mr. Pickles who lived in her closet. She asked Rex questions: "Do you like butterflies? Is being a police dog fun? Do you have a mommy?" and seemed perfectly content when he couldn't answer. But here was the crucial detail Jake and Doctor both noticed. Emma only spoke when Rex was present. If Jake tried to engage her when Rex was out of the room, even just on the other side of a door, she'd go silent again. The dog was the key that unlocked her voice. By week 4, they had a new challenge. Emma was talking, yes, but about safe things. Pancakes and butterflies and cartoon characters. The moment anyone tried to steer the conversation toward that night, toward her mother, she'd shut down. Her hands would still in Rex's fur. Her eyes would go distant. "Emma," Doctor tried gently during one session, "do you remember when Officer Jake and Rex came to your house?" Emma's face closed like a door slamming. She pressed her face into Rex's neck, silent. "It's okay, sweetheart. You don't have to talk about it right now." But they were running out of time. The preliminary hearing was in 4 days. Emma needed to do more than chat about breakfast. She needed to testify about violence, fear, and trauma. And nobody knew if she could. That night Jake stayed late at the station with Rex, throwing a tennis ball down the empty hallway while the dog fetched it tirelessly. "We've come so far, boy," Jake murmured. "But is it far enough?" Rex dropped the ball at Jake's feet and sat, looking up at him with those impossibly wise eyes. The dog couldn't answer, but somehow Jake felt reassured anyway. Rex had done his part. He'd given Emma her voice back. Now they had to hope that voice would be strong enough to speak truth in a courtroom, in front of the man who had caused her such terror. That was asking a lot from anyone, let alone a 3-year-old child. On Friday, 3 days before the hearing, Emma's grandmother brought her in for one final preparation session. Doctor had prepared photos, nothing graphic, just pictures of the courtroom, the judge's bench, the witness chair. She showed them to Emma one by one, explaining where everyone would sit, how Emma would have Rex right beside her the whole time. Emma studied each photo seriously, her small hand resting on Rex's head like a talisman. When Doctor showed her a photo of the defendant's table, Emma's fingers tightened in Rex's fur. "Emma," Doctor said softly, "you know why we're going to the big room, right? To talk to the judge about the night you were scared." Emma was quiet for a long time, then so softly they almost missed it. "The bad man will be there." Everyone froze. It was the first time Emma had acknowledged existence since that night. "Yes," Doctor said honestly, "he will be there, but so will Rex, and Officer Jake, and your grandma, and the judge who is very nice and wants to help. You'll be safe, I promise." Emma looked down at Rex, stroking his soft ears. "Rex keeps bad men away," she whispered. "He's very brave." "You're brave too, Emma," Jake said. "The bravest girl I know." Emma didn't respond, but she leaned against Rex, and the dog wrapped his head around her small body like a protective shield. They sat like that for a long time, girl and dog, preparing for a battle neither should have to fight. The hearing was Monday. Ready or not, they were out of time. Monday morning arrived cold and gray, the kind of February day that matched Emma Porter's pale, frightened face perfectly. Hayes had barely slept, spending most of the night checking on her granddaughter who had woken screaming 3 times. Each time, Emma had cried for Rex, not her mother, not her grandmother, the dog who wasn't there. Now, standing in the courthouse parking lot at 8:30 a.m., wondered if they were making a terrible mistake. Emma clung to her leg like a barnacle, her purple dress, the one she'd insisted on wearing, already wrinkled from her death grip on the fabric. The courthouse loomed above them, all stone and authority, built in 1923 when intimidating architecture was considered appropriate for justice. "I don't want to," Emma whimpered, speaking for the first time that morning. "Grandma, I don't want to." His heart shattered. She knelt down, cupping Emma's face in her weathered hands. "I know, baby girl, I know, but remember what Dr. Sarah said. Rex is inside waiting for you. Officer Jake is there. And you're going to sit in a special chair, and all you have to do is tell the truth." "Will the bad man see me?" Emma's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Hesitated. Doctor had been adamant, no lies, even comforting ones. Children needed to trust the adults guiding them through trauma. "Yes, honey, he'll be in the room, but he can't hurt you. There will be police officers everywhere, and Rex will be right next to you the whole time." Emma's lower lip trembled. For a terrifying moment, thought her granddaughter might bolt, might run back to the car and refuse to move. But then a familiar voice called out, "Emma, we've been waiting for you." Officer Jake Martinez approached from the courthouse entrance, and beside him, his tail wagging gently, was Rex. The German Shepherd wore his official K9 vest, looking every inch the professional police dog, but his eyes were soft and focused entirely on the small girl in purple. Emma's face transformed. "Rex!" She pulled away from and actually ran toward the dog, her previous terror momentarily forgotten. She crashed into Rex with a hug that would have knocked over a smaller animal, burying her face in his fur. "You're here. You're really here." "Told you I wouldn't let you down," Jake said with a warm smile, though his own stomach was twisted in knots. He'd in dozens of cases, but the pressure of this moment was something else entirely. Emma's entire ability to testify rested on Rex's presence. If the dog had been sick, if something had happened, their whole case would collapse. Dr. Sarah emerged from the courthouse, clipboard in hand, her professional demeanor in place but her eyes betraying her nervousness. "Good morning, Emma. Are you ready to go inside?" Emma, still clinging to Rex, nodded against the dog's fur. The courtroom had been transformed. Judge had taken doctor's recommendations seriously. The usual rows of gallery seating had been removed, leaving only essential personnel. The harsh fluorescent lights had been dimmed slightly, and beside the witness stand, workers had installed a child-sized chair, lower than usual, with a cushioned seat in purple, Emma's favorite color. "It looks different," Emma whispered to Rex as they entered through a side door, avoiding the main entrance where other people might overwhelm her. "We made it special just for you," Jake explained, walking slowly so Emma could keep pace, her hand tangled in Rex's vest. "See that purple chair? That's yours, and Rex is going to sit right next to you, close enough to touch the whole time." District Attorney James stood near the prosecution table, his suit perfectly pressed, his expression carefully neutral. He'd been a prosecutor for 23 years, but this case kept him awake at night. Everything hinged on the next hour. If Emma couldn't testify, would likely walk. And a man who'd terrorized a woman in front of her toddler daughter would be free to do it again. At the defense table, Robert sat reviewing notes, his expensive pen tapping an anxious rhythm. Beside him, in an Orange County Jail jumpsuit, sat. He'd been cleaned up for court, hair trimmed, face shaved, but his bulk still radiated menace. When Emma entered with Rex, eyes tracked her movement with an intensity that made Jake's hand instinctively move toward his service weapon. Emma saw him. Of course she saw him. In a room of only 15 people was impossible to miss. Her entire body went rigid. Her breathing quickened. Rex, sensing her distress immediately, pressed closer against her leg and made a soft sound, not quite a whine but a vocalization meant to comfort. "It's okay, Emma," Jake murmured. "He can't get to you, I promise." Judge entered from her chambers, her black robe swishing softly. Everyone stood, but's eyes went immediately to the small girl in purple standing next to a German shepherd. The judge's expression, usually stern, softened considerably. "Please, everyone be seated," said, her voice gentler than anyone had heard before. "Emma, sweetheart, would you like to come up here with Rex and Officer Martinez?" The walk to the witness chair felt like miles. Emma's legs moved mechanically, her hand never leaving Rex's vest. Jake positioned Rex perfectly, sitting right beside the small purple chair, close enough that Emma could reach down and touch him without stretching. Jake took a position standing slightly behind, close enough to provide security but far enough to not interfere. Doctor had prepared Emma for this moment. They'd practiced in the community room, role-playing the questions, the setting, the procedure. But practice was nothing like reality. The courtroom, even modified, felt cavernous and echoing. The judge sat high above on her bench, elevated and imposing. The court reporter's fingers flew across her stenography machine, the soft clicking sound foreign and unsettling. "Emma," Judge began, leaning forward so she could see the child better, "my name is Judge. Do you know why you're here today?" Emma's mouth opened, closed, nothing came out. Her hand found Rex's fur, gripping it tightly. "It's okay, sweetheart, take your time." The judge's voice carried such kindness that even hardened lawyers in the room felt their throats tighten. "We're all here to listen to you. No one is going to rush you." Stood slowly, approaching the witness stand with careful, deliberate movements. He'd practiced this approach 100 times with Doctor, learning how to seem non-threatening to a traumatized child. "Emma, my name is Mr. I'm going to ask you some questions, and all you need to do is tell me the truth. Can you do that?" Emma looked at Rex. The dog gazed back at her steadily, his brown eyes full of calm reassurance. Emma nodded, barely but definitely a nod. "Good," said encouragingly. "Let's start easy. Can you tell everyone here your name?" Silence stretched out. 10 seconds, 20. Saw Judge shift slightly, concern crossing her features. This wasn't going well. If Emma couldn't even say her name, how would she describe what happened that night? "Emma," tried again, his voice even softer. "Can you tell me how old you are? Can you show me with your fingers?" Emma raised 3 fingers, but her voice remained trapped inside. Glanced at Doctor, who sat in the front row, her face carefully neutral but her eyes screaming concern. They'd known this might happen. The difference between talking to Rex in the safety of the community room and testifying in front of the man who'd terrorized her was vast. But knowing it might happen and experiencing it were very different things. "Maybe we should take a break," Judge suggested, though her tone conveyed doubt that a break would help. "Your Honor, if I may," Jake spoke up. "Sometimes Rex does a little trick that helps people relax. Would it be okay if he demonstrates?" Nodded, desperate for anything that might help. Jake pulled a tennis ball from his pocket. He'd brought it specifically for this purpose. "Rex, speak," he commanded. Rex barked once, a deep, authoritative sound that somehow managed to be comforting rather than frightening. Emma's fingers loosened slightly in Rex's fur. Was that the ghost of a smile? "Now watch," Jake said, and threw the ball gently toward the back of the courtroom. "Rex, fetch." But Rex didn't move. His training was absolute. He was in testimony support mode, and nothing, not even his favorite ball, would make him leave Emma's side. The ball bounced and rolled, completely ignored. "Good boy," Emma whispered, so softly that only those closest heard it. "Good boy, Rex." 2 words. It wasn't testimony, but it was something. "Seize the moment. Emma, you love Rex, don't you?" A nod, more emphatic this time. "Rex is very good at keeping people safe, isn't he?" Another nod. Emma's breathing had slowed slightly. "Did Rex keep you safe when you were scared?" This time Emma's voice came out, thin and wavering but audible. "Yes." Progress, finally progress. But then had to ask the crucial question, the one that would make or break the case. "Emma, can you tell Judge about the night you were scared? The night Officer Jake and Rex came to your house?" Emma's hand stilled in Rex's fur. Her eyes, which had been focusing on the dog, drifted across the courtroom and landed on. The man sat perfectly still, but his presence was like a black hole, pulling all light toward it. Emma's breathing accelerated. Her face drained of color. The brief progress they'd made evaporated instantly. She shrank back in her chair, pulling away even from Rex, her body curling inward in a protective ball. Emma's voice held barely masked desperation. "Emma, it's okay, you're safe here." But Emma had disappeared inside herself again, retreating to that place where words couldn't reach her, where memories were too big and too terrible to face. She shook her head frantically, her curls flying. "Your Honor," Robert stood, his voice professionally neutral but with an edge of satisfaction. "It's clear the witness is incompetent to testify. I move to—" "Not yet, Counselor," Judge cut him off, though her face showed she was thinking the same thing. This wasn't working. The child was too traumatized. Without testimony, there was no case. The courtroom fell into heavy silence. Minutes ticked by. Emma remained curled in her chair, unreachable, lost somewhere inside her own fear. Rex whined softly, the first time he'd broken his professional composure, sensing Emma's distress but unable to fix it. James felt his case slipping away. Somewhere was probably smiling. Then Emma did something no one expected. She leaned down from her chair, pressing her entire body close to Rex's head, and whispered something directly into the dog's ear. Something only Rex, and Officer Jake Martinez, standing right behind, could possibly hear. And what she whispered would change everything. The silence in the courtroom felt alive, pressing down on everyone like a physical weight. Emma remained curled against Rex, her small body trembling, her whispered words audible only to the dog and to Officer Jake Martinez standing directly behind her. Jake's eyes widened. His hand, which had been resting casually at his side, suddenly gripped the back of Emma's chair for support. His throat worked as he swallowed hard, and Judge, who'd been watching everyone carefully, noticed immediately. "Officer Martinez," she asked, her judicial instincts sharp as ever, "did the witness say something?" Jake nodded slowly, his voice thick with emotion when he spoke. "Yes, Your Honor, she asked Rex a question." The courtroom's attention shifted like a spotlight. District Attorney James turned, hope flickering across his face. Defense attorney Robert frowned, suspicious, leaned forward slightly in his chair, his jaw tight. Even the court reporter paused, her fingers above the keys, waiting. "What did she ask?" Judge's voice was gentle but firm. Jake looked down at Emma, who remained pressed against Rex's warm fur, her eyes squeezed shut. "She asked," he paused, gathering himself. "She asked Rex if he was going to keep the bad man away." The words hung in the air like crystals, fragile and precious. Hayes, sitting in the front row, made a small choking sound, her hand covering her mouth. Dr. Sarah's eyes filled with tears she couldn't afford to shed. Not now, not when Emma needed strength around her. Judge leaned forward on her bench, her black robes falling around her like wings. "Emma," she said softly, so softly it was almost a whisper itself, "sweetheart, would you like to tell everyone what you just asked Rex, so we can all hear?" Emma's eyes opened. They were red-rimmed, terrified, but something else flickered there too, a tiny spark of courage, perhaps ignited by Rex's steady presence. She looked at the dog, and Rex looked back at her with those impossibly calm brown eyes that seemed to say, "I'm here. You're safe. You can do this." Slowly, so slowly it seemed to take forever, Emma lifted her head. Her voice came out small and cracking, like thin ice breaking. "I asked if Rex will keep the bad man away from Mommy." The courtroom seemed to stop breathing entirely. "The bad man," Judge echoed gently, though everyone in the room knew exactly who Emma meant. "Emma, sweetheart, is the bad man someone you know?" Emma's tiny hand gripped Rex's fur so tightly her knuckles turned white. She nodded, her curls bouncing slightly. "Can you point to him, honey? Is he in this room right now?" This was the moment everything had been building toward. Emma's eyes, so full of fear and innocence, slowly swept across the courtroom. They passed over her grandmother, over Doctor, over Mister with his kind face and gentle voice. They moved past the court reporter, past the bailiff standing by the door, past Judge on her high bench. And then they landed on. The man sat perfectly still at the defense table, but something in his expression shifted, a hardness around his eyes, a tension in his jaw. For just a second, he looked at Emma with something that might have been contempt, or anger, or perhaps the realization that his fate was being decided by someone barely tall enough to ride a roller coaster. Emma's finger rose, shaking like a leaf in a storm, and pointed directly at him. "Him," she said, her voice stronger now, fed by some well of courage she didn't know she possessed. "That's the bad man. He hurted my mommy." Had to grip the edge of his table to keep from showing too much emotion. This was it. This was the breakthrough they'd needed. But he had to be careful, push too hard and Emma might retreat again. Move too fast and they'd lose her. "Emma," said, approaching the witness stand with slow, measured steps, "you're doing so well. So well. Can you tell us what happened the night the bad man hurt your mommy?" Emma looked down at Rex again, drawing strength from the dog like he was some kind of furry battery charging her courage. Her fingers moved through his coat in repetitive, soothing motions. When she spoke again, her words came haltingly, in that distinctive 3-year-old cadence where every sentence felt like climbing a mountain. "He was yelling," Emma began, her voice barely above a whisper. "Really, really loud, louder than thunder. Mommy was crying and saying, 'Stop, please stop,' but he didn't stop." "Where were you when this was happening?" asked softly. "In the living room. I was watching Frozen, but then the yelling started and Mommy turned off the TV." Emma's bottom lip trembled. "I don't like yelling, it's scary." "What happened next, sweetheart?" "The bad man pushed Mommy. She fall down and there was red stuff on her face." Emma's voice cracked. "Mommy's mouth was bleeding and she was crying and I started crying too and I tried to help her but the bad man said, 'Get out of the way, you little brat.'" Robert half rose from his seat, perhaps to object to the characterization, but Judge silenced him with a single raised hand. No one was going to interrupt this child now. "Then what happened?" prompted gently. I to my room and I hide it in my closet because that's where Mommy said to hide if there's ever trouble. She said to hide and be quiet as a mouse. Tears were streaming down Emma's face now, but her voice continued, gaining momentum like a small stream becoming a river. I heard more yelling and breaking sounds and I was so scared. I thought the bad man was going to hurt Mommy more. I thought maybe she would die. The last word came out as a sob. Hayes was openly crying now, her hands clasped in prayer. Doctor's professional composure had cracked, tears tracking down her cheeks. Even the bailiff, a 20-year veteran who'd seen everything, had to look away and blink rapidly. Rex, sensing Emma's rising distress, did something remarkable. Without any command from Jake, the dog stood up on his hind legs, placing his front paws gently on Emma's lap, bringing his face level with hers. It was a breach of protocol, technically, but Jake didn't correct him. Some things were more important than procedure. Emma wrapped her arms around Rex's neck, sobbing into his fur. "I was so scared, Rex, so scared." "I know, baby," Jake murmured, though he knew he probably shouldn't speak. "I know, but you're safe now, I promise." After a long moment, Emma's sobs quieted. She pulled back slightly from Rex, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. Judge silently passed a box of tissues to the bailiff, who brought them to Emma. The little girl took one, blowing her nose with an absurdly loud honk that would have been comical under any other circumstances. "Emma," said, his own voice thick with emotion, "you're the bravest person in this entire courtroom. Can you tell us one more thing? When Officer Jake and Rex came to your house, what happened then?" Emma's face changed, the fear subsiding slightly, replaced with something like relief at the memory. "The police came and there was lots of lights and the bad man stopped yelling. Officer Jake found me in my closet, and I was really scared of him too because he's really big, but then Rex came." "What did Rex do?" "He crawled to me really slow and gentle, like he knew I was scared. And he put his head down like this," Emma demonstrated by tilting her head to the side. "And he looked at me with his nice eyes and I knew he was a good doggy, not like the bad man at all. He was there to help." "And you felt safe with Rex?" "Yes," Emma nodded emphatically. "Rex is the bestest dog in the whole world. He keeps bad mans away. Right, Rex?" Rex, still standing with his paws on Emma's lap, licked her hand once, and Emma laughed, actually laughed. A sound so pure and unexpected that it broke through the heavy emotion in the room like sunshine through storm clouds. Glanced at Judge, who gave him a subtle nod. He had enough, more than enough. Emma had identified her attacker, described the assault, placed herself as a witness to domestic violence. Combined with Jenna Porter's testimony, the physical evidence, and the 911 call, they had a solid case. "No further questions, Your Honor," said quietly. Robert stood slowly. He looked at Emma, then at Rex, then at his client. Any defense attorney with half a conscience knew when they were beaten. "No questions for this witness, Your Honor." Judge addressed Emma one final time. "Emma Porter, you have been the bravest witness I've ever seen in my courtroom. Thank you for your courage. You and Rex can step down now." As Jake helped Emma down from the witness chair, Rex staying glued to her side, the little girl looked back at Judge. "Will you keep the bad man in jail, so he can't hurt my mommy no more?" Judge's voice was firm and clear. "Yes, Emma, I will make sure your mommy stays safe. I promise." Emma nodded, satisfied, and walked out of the courtroom with Rex, her hand resting on his back, her head held just a little bit higher than when she'd entered. Behind her sat with his head in his hands, knowing his fate was sealed. And in the gallery, Hayes clutched Doctor's hand, both women weeping with relief and pride. One little girl and one extraordinary dog had just changed the course of justice. The preliminary hearing concluded at 11:47 a.m., exactly 12 hours after Officer Jake Martinez's shift had started that morning. Judge took less than 5 minutes to make her ruling. There was more than sufficient evidence to bind over for trial on charges of felonious assault, domestic violence, and child endangerment. Bail was revoked, would remain in county jail pending trial. But something else happened in that courtroom that morning, something that rippled far beyond the walls of county courthouse. Within 2 hours, the local news had picked up the story. By evening, it had gone regional. By the next morning, national news outlets were calling the district attorney's office, all asking the same question. Can we interview the little girl who with the police dog? Absolutely not, Hayes told them firmly, slamming down her phone for the 15th time that day. Emma was upstairs napping, exhausted from the emotional toll of testimony, and wasn't about to let anyone exploit her granddaughter's trauma for ratings. But James understood something important. Emma's story wasn't just about one case. It was about changing how the justice system treated its most vulnerable witnesses. So instead of hiding from the media, he held a press conference, without Emma, protecting her privacy fiercely, to discuss the power of facility dogs in courtrooms. What we witnessed yesterday wasn't just a successful testimony, told the assembled reporters, his voice carrying conviction born from seeing Emma's courage firsthand. We witnessed how simple compassion and innovative thinking can unlock justice. Emma Porter couldn't speak for weeks. Traditional methods weren't working. But with Rex beside her, she found her voice. And in finding her voice, she may have just changed how courts across America handle child witnesses. The footage of the press conference was powerful, but what really captured hearts was the single photo the court had authorized for release. Emma's small hand resting on Rex's head as they left the courthouse, the dog looking up at her with unmistakable devotion. No faces shown, protecting Emma's identity, but the image said everything that needed saying. The photo went viral. Within 48 hours, it had been shared millions of times across social media platforms. Rex the Hero trended on Twitter. News anchors got choked up discussing it. Editorials appeared in major newspapers arguing for expanded facility dog programs nationwide. Dr. Sarah's phone didn't stop ringing. Trauma therapists from across the country wanted to know more about Emma's case, about the protocols they'd followed, about how to implement similar programs. She found herself giving interviews to professional journals, speaking at conferences, becoming an unexpected expert in child testimony and facility dogs. The key, she explained to a packed auditorium at a child psychology conference in Chicago 3 weeks later, is understanding that trauma literally changes brain chemistry. Emma's amygdala, her fear center, was in overdrive. Traditional courtroom settings trigger that fear response, making testimony nearly impossible. But Rex activated different neural pathways. His presence released oxytocin, the bonding hormone, which counteracted her cortisol levels. Essentially, the dog helped regulate her nervous system enough that she could access traumatic memories without being overwhelmed by them. Sat in his county jail cell watching the news coverage with growing dread. His public defender, Robert, visited him on a Wednesday afternoon with reality written all over his face. "They're offering a plea deal," said, sliding papers across the metal table. 8 years, eligible for parole in 5 with good behavior. Domestic violence counseling, anger management, supervised visitation rights to be determined after release. 8 years, exploded. For what? A domestic dispute. People have fights all the time. Stop, his voice was ice. I've been doing this for 20 years. I can read a jury, and after that little girl's testimony, after the entire nation has seen that photo, you will not find 12 people anywhere in this state who won't convict you. The prosecution has you on assault, domestic violence in front of a minor child endangerment. They're talking about stacking charges that could put you away for 15 years, maybe more. Was silent, his jaw working furiously. Take the deal, advised. It's the best you're going to get. If we go to trial, if that child has to testify again, if a jury sees her crying with that dog, he shook his head. You'll get the maximum sentence and you'll deserve it. 3 days later, accepted the plea agreement. He would serve 8 years in state prison. The case that had hinged on whether a 3-year-old could testify was resolved without ever going to trial. Emma would never have to face him in court again. When told Emma the news, the little girl was playing with her dolls in the living room. She looked up with those enormous blue eyes. "The bad man is going to jail. For a very long time, baby." "Good." Emma returned to her dolls, acting out a scene where a purple unicorn rescued a princess from a dragon. But then she paused. "Grandma, can we call Rex and Officer Jake? I want to tell them thank you." That phone call led to a visit, which became regular visits. Jake and Rex started stopping by his house once a week, just to check on Emma. They'd play in the backyard, Rex patiently enduring Emma's attempts to dress him up in doll clothes, Jake pushing Emma on the swing set while she shrieked with delight. Emma was healing, slowly but surely. The nightmares decreased from nightly to twice a week, then once a week. She started preschool and made friends. Her mother, Jenna, completed her court-mandated counseling program and substance abuse treatment. 6 months after the hearing, mother and daughter were reunited, moving into a small but safe apartment across town. But the ripples continued spreading. Ohio State Representative Maria had watched Emma's story on the news. She'd cried over breakfast, watching that photo of the small hand on the dog's head. Then she'd called her legislative aide. "I want to draft a bill, facility dogs in every courthouse in Ohio. Make it happen." Emma's Law, as it came to be known, passed the Ohio House with overwhelming bipartisan support 6 months later. It mandated that all Ohio courthouses with family and criminal divisions have access to certified facility dogs for witness support, particularly for children and trauma survivors. Funding was allocated for training programs, for handler salaries, for the dogs themselves. Other states took notice. Within a year, similar legislation was introduced in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Indiana, and Kentucky. Within 2 years, facility dog programs had expanded to 43 states, serving thousands of traumatized witnesses who might otherwise never have found their voices. Judge found herself traveling to judicial conferences, training other judges on trauma-informed courtroom practices. She told Emma's story, always protecting the child's identity, dozens of times, watching as hardened jurists wiped away tears. "The law isn't just about statutes and precedents," she'd tell them. "It's about people, and sometimes helping people means thinking outside the box. It means putting a dog in a courtroom, even when it's never been done before, because justice without compassion isn't justice at all." 1 year after Emma's testimony, Jake Martinez received a commendation from the mayor. Rex, sitting beside him in the city council chambers, received an honorary certificate making him an outstanding citizen of. Emma attended the ceremony, sitting in the front row with her mother and grandmother, clapping so enthusiastically when Rex's name was called that several people laughed. Afterward, Emma ran up to Rex and threw her arms around his neck. "You're famous, Rex. Everyone knows you're a hero." Jake knelt down beside them. "You know what, Emma? You're the real hero. You were so brave. You changed everything." Emma thought about that seriously, her small face scrunched in concentration. "I was really scared, though." "Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared," Jake explained. "It means you do the right thing even when you're scared. That's exactly what you did." Emma smiled, that pure, uncomplicated smile that only children could manage. "Next time I won't be so scared, because I know Rex will be there." "Always," Jake promised and meant it. What none of them fully understood yet was that next time would inspire Emma's life path. That little girl in purple overalls would grow up with a mission. But that was a story still being written, one day at a time, one small act of courage building on another. For now, Emma was 5 years old, healing, thriving, and drawing pictures of Rex wearing a superhero cape. She taped them all over her bedroom walls, a gallery of gratitude to the dog who had helped her find her voice. And somewhere in Ohio, in courthouses from Cleveland to Cincinnati, Other children were beginning to testify with facility dogs beside them, finding their own voices, telling their own truths. All because one little girl whispered a question to a dog, and that dog, and the people around them, listened. Emma Porter's 5th birthday party was exactly what a 5-year-old's party should be: chaotic, loud, and filled with enough sugar to power a small city. Purple balloons, still her favorite color, covered the ceiling of backyard pavilion. A homemade cake shaped like a butterfly sat on the table, slightly lopsided but made with love. 7 children from Emma's kindergarten class ran screaming through the sprinklers, their laughter echoing off the surrounding houses. But Emma wasn't with them. She sat on the back porch steps, wearing her new purple birthday dress, waiting with barely contained excitement. Every few seconds, she'd jump up and peer down the driveway, then sit back down with an exaggerated sigh. "Emma, sweetheart, come play with your friends," Jenna Porter called, looking healthier than she had in years. 2 years sober, steady job as a dental assistant, therapy twice a month, Jenna had rebuilt her life brick by brick. The scared, broken woman from that terrible February night was gone, replaced by someone stronger, someone who'd learned that asking for help wasn't weakness. "Not yet, Mommy. They're not here yet," Emma bounced impatiently. "Who's not?" Jenna started to ask, but then she heard it, a familiar bark. Her face split into a genuine smile. "Oh, they're here." Emma launched off the porch like a rocket, her party dress streaming behind her as she raced around the side of the house. There, climbing out of his patrol car, was Officer Jake Martinez. And beside him, moving a little slower than he used to but with his tail wagging enthusiastically, was Rex. Rex, Emma's shriek of joy could probably be heard 3 blocks away. She crashed into the German Shepherd with her usual lack of grace, wrapping her arms around his neck in a hug that would have knocked over a less patient animal. You came to my birthday." "Of course we came," Jake laughed, carrying a wrapped present. "We wouldn't miss it for anything. Happy birthday, Emma." Rex, now 7 years old with distinguished gray around his muzzle, tolerated Emma's enthusiastic affection with the patience of a saint. He licked her face, making her giggle uncontrollably, then sat calmly as she chattered at him nonstop. "Rex, I'm 5 now. That's this many fingers." She held up her hand. "And I started kindergarten, and I have a best friend named Sophie, and we learned about police dogs in school, and I told everyone about you, and Mrs. Henderson said you're a hero, and I said, I know, he's my hero, and—" "Emma, breathe," Jenna interrupted, walking over with. Both women greeted Jake warmly. Over the past 18 months, he and Rex had become extended family, stopping by at least once a month, sometimes more. Emma's connection to Rex had never faded. If anything, it had deepened into something beautiful, a friendship that transcended species, built on trust forged in darkness and maintained through consistent love. "Come on, I have to show you something." Emma grabbed Jake's hand with one of hers and Rex's collar with the other, dragging them toward the house. In her bedroom, now painted lavender with glow-in-the-dark stars, a deliberate echo of the room where she'd once hidden in terror, the walls were covered with drawings. Dozens and dozens of drawings, all featuring the same subject: Rex. Rex wearing a cape, Rex with a police badge, Rex saving people from fires, from floods, from monsters, Rex with angel wings, Rex surrounded by hearts, Rex playing with Emma. Each drawing was labeled in kindergarten handwriting, often with creative spelling. "Rex the hero, my best Rex, Rex." Jake felt his throat tighten as he looked at this gallery of gratitude. "Emma, these are incredible." "This one's my favorite." Emma pointed to a recent drawing that showed surprising skill for a 5-year-old. It depicted a small girl in purple holding hands with a woman, and beside them stood a dog. Above them, drawn in careful yellow crayon, was a bright sun. At the bottom, Emma had written, "My." "That's you and your mom?" Jake asked gently. "And Rex," Emma said firmly. "He's family too, right, Rex?" Rex, sitting in the middle of the bedroom floor, thumped his tail in agreement. Later, after cake had been devoured and presents opened, after the other children had been picked up by their parents, Emma sat in the backyard with Rex's head in her lap, contentedly stroking his soft ears. Jenna and sat nearby with Jake, drinking coffee in the cooling evening air. "She's doing so well," Jake observed, watching Emma whisper secrets to Rex. "You'd never know." "Oh, she still has hard days," Jenna said honestly. "Sometimes she wakes up from nightmares. Sometimes loud noises startle her, but she's in therapy and doctor says she's processing the trauma in really healthy ways. Drawing helps, talking to Rex helps, having a stable, safe home helps. She told her class she wants to be a police dog helper when she grows up," added with a warm smile. "Apparently she wants to train dogs to help other scared kids." Jake looked at Emma, at the little girl who had been so traumatized she couldn't speak, now chattering away to his partner about butterfly metamorphosis or some other kindergarten lesson. "You know what? I believe she'll do it. This kid is tougher than most adults I know." "She learned from the best," Jenna said, nodding toward Rex. "That dog saved more than just the case. He saved her ability to trust again, to feel safe, to speak her truth." As if sensing he was being discussed, Rex lifted his head and looked at Jake with those knowing brown eyes. They'd been partners for 5 years now, had faced down dangerous suspects, tracked missing persons, searched buildings for contraband. But this, helping Emma find her voice, this was their most important work. "I got a call last week," Jake mentioned, "from a school district in Columbus. They want to start a program bringing facility dogs into elementary schools to help kids with anxiety and trauma. They asked if I'd consult on training protocols." "Are you going to do it?" asked. "Already said yes. Rex and I have maybe 3 good working years left before he retires. I want to spend them training the next generation of facility dogs and handlers. Emma's case proved how powerful this work can be. I want to expand it, help more kids." They sat in comfortable silence, watching Emma demonstrate what appeared to be a complicated dance routine for Rex, who observed with patient attention. "Do you ever think about how different things would be if you hadn't brought Rex that night?" Jenna asked quietly. "If he hadn't crawled into that closet?" Jake considered the question. Without Rex, Emma likely never would have spoken. Without testimony, would have walked. Without the case making national news, Emma's law never would have passed. Thousands of traumatized witnesses across the country never would have gotten the support they needed. One dog, one frightened child, one moment of connection in a closet, and from that, ripples that changed the justice system itself. "I think," Jake said slowly, "that sometimes the universe puts the right people and the right dogs in the right place at the right time. Rex and Emma needed each other that night, and it turns out a lot of other people needed them too." As the sun set over, painting the sky in shades of purple that matched Emma's dress, the little girl stood up and announced to Rex, "When I grow up, I'm going to help dogs help kids just like you helped me. I'm going to be brave just like you taught me." Rex stood, shook himself, and walked over to Emma. She wrapped her arms around his neck one more time, pressing her face into his fur the way she had that terrible night, the way she had in the courtroom, the way she had dozens of times since. But this time there were no tears, no fear, no trauma, just love and gratitude and an unbreakable bond. "Thank you, Rex," Emma whispered, "for keeping the bad man away, for helping me be brave, for being my best friend." Officer Jake Martinez looked at his partner and the little girl who had changed both their lives, and he smiled. They'd done their job. They'd protected and served. They'd brought justice and healing. And in 18 more years, when Emma Porter graduated from the first canine-assisted therapy program in Ohio with honors, when she went on to train facility dogs for courtrooms and schools across the nation, when she told her story to inspire thousands of other trauma survivors, Rex's legacy would live on through her. But that was the future. For now, on this perfect evening, a 5-year-old girl played with her hero, A dog who had taught her that courage wasn't the absence of fear, it was finding your voice despite it. And that was the most important lesson of all. The end.